All right, so in our previous video, we talked about how do we divide when I've got a decimal in the dividend. And today we're going to talk about how do I divide when I've got decimals everywhere, when I've got them in my divisor, when I've got them inside my dividend. How do we divide? So I've got a little song that I like to sing that goes, move it over, bring it up, and divide. And that kind of helps me remember the steps that I need to take when I am dividing with a decimal in my divisor. So I've got an example problem here for us. 5 and 75 hundredths divided by 5 tenths. So I'm going to set this up, remembering that my first number always becomes my dividend. So 5 and 75 hundredths goes inside the house. 0 and 5 tenths goes on the outside of the house. Now, when we divide, we always want our divisor here to be a whole number. And right now, 5 tenths is not a whole number. But there's one simple thing that I can do to transform 5 tenths into the whole number. And that is I can take the decimal and I can move it over until it reaches the end of my whole number. So that's where the move it over comes from, is I move over the decimal in the dividend and in the divisor. And however many times I move that decimal in the divisor, I have to move it the same amount of times in the dividend. So if I move it one time on the divisor, I move it one time over here on the dividend. So there was move it over, move it over. The next step is bring it up. So we're going to bring that decimal up to the top. And now we can divide like we know how to do. But the great thing is when I moved over that decimal in the divisor, I created an unnecessary 0. I don't really need that 0 right there anymore. It's just the whole number 5. So now let's divide. 5 goes into 5 a total of 1 time. 1 times 5 gives me 5. When I subtract, I get 0. I'm going to bring down the 7. And 5 goes into 7 1 time. 1 times 5 is still 5. When I subtract, I get 2. Bring down the 5, right? Because I already brought that decimal up to the roof because decimals only raise the roof. Brought down that 5, and now I have 5 goes into 25 a total of 5 times. 5 times 5 is exactly 25. And once I get that final answer of 0, I get my quotient as 11 and 5 tenths. Let's look at another problem. Let's do 25 and 6 tenths over 4 hundredths. So remember, when I have a fraction, my top dog, my numerator is always my dividend. So I'm going to put 25 and 6 tenths inside the house, 4 hundredths on the outside of the house. And I see that decimal in my divisor, so I'm going to sing my song that goes, move it over. But this time, I've moved that decimal 2 times, so I need to move it over 2 times in my dividend. So there was move it over, bring it up, and divide. But before I can divide, I got to fill in this missing gap right here, right? I have to have a digit that fills in that blank spot. Our digit that fills in those blank spots is the digit 0. And then when I look over here, my divisor doesn't look like 4 hundredths anymore. Now instead, with that decimal moved all the way to the very end, it looks like the whole number 4. So I'm going to get rid of that unnecessary 0. And let's divide like we know how to do. So I have 4 goes into 2 0 times, but 4 goes into 25 a total of 6 times. 6 times 4 gives me 24. When I subtract, I get 1, and I bring down the 6. 4 goes into 16 a total of 4 times. 4 times 4 is 16. I subtract and I get 0, but I also have to bring down the 0. And 4 will go into 0 a total of 0 times. And you might be thinking, well, Miss Smith, if it looks like I have a remainder of 0, I should just be done and my answer is just 64. But again, I have this really big gap right here in between the 4 and the decimal. And what fills that gap is a 0. So my quotient of 25 and 6 tenths divided by 4 hundredths is 640. All right, one more. Let's do this time 98 and 4 tenths divided by 6 hundredths. I see that decimal in my divisor, so I'm going to sing my song. move it over, bring it up, and divide. Again, I see that giant hole, that gap in between my 4 and where my decimal is, so I need to add a 0. I see some unnecessary zeros now in my divisor, so I'm going to get rid of it. And now I'm going to divide like I know how to do. So 6 goes into 9 one time. 1 times 6 is 6. 9 minus 6 is 3. Bring down the 8. 6 goes into 38 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36. When I subtract, I get 2. Bring down the 4. 6 goes into 24 4 times. 4 times 6 is 24. When I subtract, I get 0, but don't forget to bring down that last 0. Again, fill that gap. 6 goes into 0 0 times. So I get a final quotient of 1,640.